I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be, are you codependent? Well, that's an interesting term. And over the years, I'm a coach. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist, even though I coach a lot of psychologists, counselors, and therapists. And I think therapy can be very beneficial for people who really struggle with mommy issues, daddy issues, or other psychological problems or things that they're trying to overcome. Because what I think is great about therapy is that when you talk about something, you're sharing it, you're expressing it, you're feeling the emotions behind it. And if any of you have ever been to therapy, or for the therapists that are watching this, it's a place. What are you feeling? How does that make you feel? They focus a lot on that. Because when you focus on what you're feeling, you experience your emotions just like a child does. And you got to feel it to heal it. You got to get into it before you can get out of it. And something I think is really important to understand about codependency and what it means is that, because there's probably a lot of people watching this video who suffer from that. It's like, when I really learned what codependency all it was, and you can read lots about it on the internet, I realized that the dysfunctional family that I came from, that was something that I definitely struggle with. And so I got a quote that I wrote on this topic, and then I'm going to go through an email with a guy who's realized that he was codependent, because it really affects the quality of the relationship that you get into. Because a lot of times codependent people, what they tend to do is, because we don't think we deserve to have what we really want, we put our needs last. And therefore we tend to attract people, not only lovers, but friends and people into our lives who we're constantly trying to save, or we're constantly putting their needs above our own. That's why a woman will cover up for her alcoholic husband, or make excuses for the kid that's constantly fucking up and getting into trouble and trying to solve the problems, instead of allowing that child just to experience the consequences of their own actions. So I got a quote that I wrote, and I'm going to go through it, and then we're going to jump into this guy's email. And the quote says, if you are constantly putting your needs last to the needs of everyone else around you, or tend to have or become involved in relationships that are one-sided, destructive, or abusive, then you may be codependent. Dysfunctional families tend to ignore that problems exist. My family was definitely like that, and I'll get into that in a minute. When this happens, family members learn to repress their own emotions and disregard their own needs. They don't talk, touch, feel, confront, or trust. Codependent people tend to have a low self-esteem and seek circumstances, events, or people outside of themselves to be happy. When you look for happiness outside of yourself and depend upon the approval of others, you often will be disappointed and unhappy when people do not live up to your expectations. Loving yourself, putting your needs first, and booting toxic or abusive people out of your life will help your overall sense of happiness and well-being. Professional counseling and therapy can also be tremendously beneficial and helpful to getting free of codependency and unhealthy tendencies for good. Like, I'll give an example. Like you may have heard me talk about, my mother was a psychotic schizophrenic. When I was 19 years old, I was in college, I came home one day, and I walked in the house, and there was literally watery footprints from one side of the house to the other. And so she had gone from her bathroom into the den, which was on the other side of the house, and there was water on the chair, and it's like I remember I was like, this is kind of weird. I walked into her bathroom, and there was water all over the floor. It's like, whatever happened, I'm seeing us thinking, did my mom get kidnapped? Did she get raped? It's like something happened when she was in the shower. And the phone was on the floor in the den. There was just water. I was like, what the fuck is going on? So I called my dad, and I was like, Dad, it's like I came home, and Mom's not here. The phone's on the floor. There was clothes in a heap. There's water everywhere, towels laying on the floor. I was like, what the fuck? And my dad was like, oh, they had coin laundries, and he was up at one of them, and he was just, my dad was always, I'll just brush under the rug. It's not a big deal. And I was basically said to my dad, it's like, Dad, you need to get your fucking ass home. Something is wrong. He was like, oh, all right, So it's like he gets in a car and starts driving home, and at some point later, my mom's best friend from college shows up, and my mother is like in the front seat of her car. She was like in one of those big conversion type vans, you know, that you'd sleep in and everything. And my mother had this look on her face, is like, it was like the lights were on, but no, he was home. She just had this like terrified, just scared shitless out of her mind look in her eyes. I was like, I'd never seen that before. It kind of freaked. I was 19. It kind of freaked me out. My brother, who was younger, he was like 15 at the time, and he really had a really difficult time with it. And you know, and then after a while, it's like she left because my mom was like, "We got to get out of here." It was like, you know, she later, you know, my mom's friend later told us what happened. My mom's like, "There's demons, there's spirits, they're gonna get us, they're gonna blow the van up. We got to get out of here." And so, like, actually, she left. And at some point, she was like, I don't know, a mile or two away. She's like, "Stop the car! We got to get out! They're gonna blow the car up!" And so my mom literally like jumped out of the car when it was still kind of moving, and all she has is her fucking bathrobe on. My little 110-pound mother, and she's like pacing up and down. And she wouldn't get back in the car. And then at that point, my mom's friend came back and told us what happened. And it's like, I think that's when my dad came and brought her back or something like that. And she's like, she wouldn't get out of the car. It was just fucking really bizarre. And I don't really remember like the chain of events, but at some point, it's like she drove away. She got in the car and like took off. And we didn't see her or hear from her for like 3 days. We called the police. We didn't know what had happened, where she was. You know, she took our little dog. We had a little black poodle, and then finally, like 3 or 4 days later, the police called and said, "Hey, we found your car." And so we get there, and my dog, he's like, you know, he's in the van. He's like totally dehydrated, and he'd been crapping in the van because he was locked up in it for a couple of days. And so she'd literally driven it, you know, across town like 30 minutes away, got out of the car, left the dog in the car, and was walking around the neighborhood. We were like, you know, she'd taken a bunch of jewelry of mine. And we like found pieces of jewelry on the road. It was totally fucking bizarre. And so the police had found her, and they could tell something was wrong with her. And so they put her in the back of a cruiser, and they ended up taking her to a mental hospital. And it's like, so she was in a mental hospital for like 2 weeks, and she gets out, and it's like, we didn't talk about it. It's like she would joke about, "Oh, well, when I was loony," and she would kind of laugh it off. My dad just went back to drinking his beer and watching TV and spacing out and ignoring us, ignoring her. And it was just like a cycle. Like, she'd be okay for a couple of months, then because my mom was, you know, a very confident, very determined person, she didn't think there was anything. And that's the thing with psychotic, you know, the difference between psychotic schizophrenics versus people that are depressed. Depressed people recognize they have a problem and they'll take medication, but psychotic schizophrenics, they don't think there's anything wrong with them, and they don't like medication, they don't like the way it makes them feel, and they're always finding ways to get off of it. And back then, the psychologists and the doctors that were working with her, they fucking sucked ass. Like, you know, I remember this Indian guy, it's like, he didn't give a fuck. It was like, "Hey, take a fucking pill and get out of my face," was kind of the attitude back then. And it's like, I wanted to fucking beat his ass. He was useless. And he was like one of those type of doctors that was punching a clock, he's making good money, and he didn't fucking care. He didn't like what he was doing. He was how he earned his living. And so it's like, and I later moved out, you know, went off to college, and I eventually moved to Orlando. And it's like once or twice a year, my mom would go off her medication. She would flip. It would take like a month and a half for the effects to like totally wear off, to where she'd like totally freak out, see things, be talking to dead people, like, you know, all kinds of fucking weird, crazy shit. And she'd do something, you know, she would disappear. Like, I remember one time, it took like 3 like big ass fucking police officers to wrestle my mom, get her hands behind her back, cuff her, and, you know, like, she's screaming and yelling. I mean, this is like on our neighbor, and all the neighbors are going, they're watching this fucking display, and I'm like embarrassed. Like, and we never talked about this. It's like it's like that's just the way my dad dealt with things, was to not deal with it. So they, you know, I remember it's like she's got her arms behind her back, and you have these 3 muscular sheriff's deputies trying to put her in the back of the car, and she's like, no, you're not taking me away, you're not putting me in the Looney Tune house again, or whatever the hell it was she was saying. She put her feet up, and like, it was just, they had to cuff her feet and like hog tie her and put her in on her stomach. It was just like, and my mother was like 110 pounds. You know, she was a professional swimmer, she won state and all that, but it's like she really wasn't working out or anything. Like, these guys are fucking huge, and they really struggled getting her in the car. I was like, it was just fucking bizarre. That was just one of the experiences. And after all that, they'd take her to the mental hospital. She'd be there for a couple of weeks. We would never go see her or talk about her or anything. She'd come back. She'd be normal. Same thing. oh, when I was loony, laugh about it. And like even when I moved away, it was like the same thing. Once or twice a year, she'd flip out. They put her in a mental hospital, which would be extremely expensive. Get her medicated again. She'd be fine for 6 months. It was just like a constant cycle. We never talked about things. It was just never dealt with. And so, it's like when you grow up in an environment where there's no talking, there's no hugs, there's no I love yous. And, like later on, when I was an adult, my mother like flipped out. It's like we didn't talk about these things at all. And it's like if you read my book and you've been following my videos for a while, it's like looking back on, I understand why I was the way I was. Why I had self-esteem issues. I didn't think I was good enough. That caused me to be fearful. That caused me to chase women that I really liked when I was younger, and literally chase them right out of my life because I didn't feel like I was unworthy. So it's something that I think a lot of people struggle from. They grow up in these families and they don't really understand what it is. So that's why I wanted to share this, because this, just like I talked about in the quote of how, like when you grow up in a dysfunctional family and that ignores the problems, you repress your own emotions, you disregard your own needs. It's like you avoid these kinds of things. And it's like when you start dating and you get into a relationship or even friendships, and it's like you don't know how to interact with other people because it's like inside you feel tremendously unworthy. And it's like for me, I focused on self-help and learning things that I didn't know from experts and people and applying those things. And how I got past all this stuff was learning from other people that were more successful than I was and applying those things through time and repetition, and literally how these bad experiences and these fears would get replaced with the successes that I was experiencing, whether it was career or dating or the relationships that I was having. And that slowly built up my self-esteem. It's like I grew up in a family, but it's like my 20s and early 30s is how I had to become an adult on my own. I kind of had to raise myself emotionally because of that. And I know a lot of people struggle with this. And so let's get to the viewer's email. He says, "Good day to you, Coach. About a month ago, my girlfriend of 2 years suddenly dumped me. I started watching your newsletters, and I've downloaded your book to both my computer and my phone, and I now am on my third read-through. I'm 51 years old, and I feel as though I have been sleeping in a haze of denial and ignorance since coming across your material. You also did a video based on an email that I did previously called The Power of Saying No. Anyway, one of the other issues about me that I discovered about myself is I started really looking at my behaviors and asking myself why I do the things I do around friends, family, and especially relationships, was that I am codependent. Codependency is defined as people with a predisposition to be a codependent enabler often find themselves in relationships where their primary role is that of the rescuer, supporter, and confidant. Confidant, I should say. These helper types are often dependent upon the other person's poor functioning to satisfy their own person's needs. So in other words, you get into a relationship with somebody, you start dating somebody, and it's totally fucked up. They don't pay much attention to you. Like for me, when I would feel attraction for a woman, especially when I was in my 20s, that's why I had a lot of situations where I become the friend, the nice guy friend, hoping that someday it would turn into a relationship. And so the more I got ignored, the more it felt like the relationship that I had with my mother and my other family members. It felt natural because that's all I knew. That's what I thought normal was. And I figured just eventually some point she'll fall in love because that's what I saw on TV all the time. That's what happens in all the movies. Eventually the girl goes, you know what? I think I'm in love with you. Let's have a relationship. Oh my God. And they go on some ultimate date and they live happily ever after. In the real world, that shit doesn't fucking happen. It was like over and over I kept experiencing that, and it never fucking happened for me. He says codependency often involves placing a lower priority on one's own needs while being excessively preoccupied with the needs of others. So true. That's exactly what I used to do. He says, as I'm learning about this condition, I am finding that the above definition simply starts to scratch the surface. At this time, I am 100% in no contact with my ex, and she's not even in the top 5 priorities of my thought processes. It's been well over 40 days since there's been any contact, and my top priority is learning about myself and what it is that really makes me tick instead of focusing on other people as I often did. It's like the old adage, know thyself from Latin. That's what I did. That's why I got so into self-help when I was younger, because I certainly couldn't get any help from my own family because, I mean, they were pretty fucked up. Both sides of the family. So I sought to learn about these things. Initially started out just wanting to be more successful in life, career, business, making money, because to me, at the time, I was thinking, hey, when I make money and I have all this success, then I'll have a great girl in my life and I'll have these all awesome things and this wonderful life and everything will be wonderful like you see in the movies. But it's like once I got all that success and happiness and I realized, why am I still not happy? There was something that was missing. It's really about getting to a place where you're happy with yourself and you learn to love yourself and realize, I'm fucking awesome. I have a lot to offer somebody. Because like when you're in this state, when you don't think you're good enough, when you think you suck, when you think you amount to a big steaming pile of dog dung, you literally will attract all kinds of people into your life that will support your belief system and your model of the world and the way that you perceive yourself. That's why it's so hard to get out of these situations and these kinds of relationships and friendships, business partnerships, where you're in essence constantly being taken advantage of and treated like a second-class citizen. Because it's literally everywhere you look in your life, you've got people around you who are literally walking all over you, and you think it's normal because that's what you've been experiencing since you were a child. And then when you start learning about these things and applying these things, the people that are in your life and they depend upon being able to walk all over you to feel good about themselves and their own lives, they start going, you're an asshole. You're selfish. What's wrong with you? You're nuts. There's something wrong. You should get a psychologist. You should get a counselor. You're fucked up. And in reality, they're just trying to keep you down at their level. And you finally get to a place where you make healthy friendships. You make healthy relationships. You don't tolerate bullshit from other people. You don't allow people to come into your life and treat you like dog shit. First time somebody does, you love me and say, hey, don't talk to me that way. Don't treat me that way. If you want to continue being in my life, this is how you need to treat me. If they continue doing it, then you get to flush them right out of your life, like flushing a turd down the toilet. He says, as I review, watch, and read your information time and again, I see a recurring pattern from the majority of the other guys that write into you. I'm not a psychologist or an expert in behavior, but it is possible that some of these other poor bastards have codependency issues and like me are 100% in the dark about why this condition is. I would absolutely agree with that statement. He says, it is so gut-wrenching to be my age now and suddenly have the blinders taken off to learn that I have this condition. Well, one of the things I love about what Tony Robbins said many years ago is that the past does not equal the future. Even if, I think he said he's 51, now you're aware of it. That's the important thing. Now once you become aware of what's fucked up and what you're doing wrong in your life, then you can actually do something about it. Because it's like when you don't know what you don't know, it's like running around in the dark without a flashlight. You're going to run into shit and it's going to hurt. He says, I so badly wish I would have been knocked across the head with this information years ago. You know what? There's nothing wrong. You've only ever done what you were meant to do. What happened, happened, and it couldn't have happened any other way. And there are people that are half your age that are watching this that are going, holy shit, I'm codependent. And they can do something with it. They go get therapy or they apply a book like mine or self-help, whatever it happens to be. He said, I paid a heavy price, not only in my relationships, but in my career and who and what I've become at this time. My plea is that at some point you utilize the very awesome position of respect you command to educate other men and women about this very common yet destructive behavior condition known as codependency. God bless you, Coach. Well, you know what? God bless you for sharing your email, and giving me a good idea for a topic to talk about, because I know a lot of people suffer from this, because there's a lot of people that grow up in dysfunctional families like I did, and they have no idea how this has affected them negatively. Again, it's all about knowing yourself. It's like there was a I think it was Confucius said this, or maybe it was Plato or Aristotle, one of them. They said, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. That's definitely something to think about. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching session. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the products tab at the top of your screen. and just follow the instructions for booking whichever option works best for you. And I will talk to you soon.